There are moments in life so quiet, so fleeting, that most people never notice them at all. Yet within them exists the power to alter everything. Not years, not months, mere seconds. In one of those moments, a choice was made that would extend far beyond the walls of that room. He was only one among many. No reputation, no status, no visible sign of distinction. Nothing about him appeared extraordinary. And yet, within less than half a minute, something invisible shifted. A passage opened that countless others had passed without ever recognizing it existed. What can truly be understood in 29 seconds? Not achievements, not credentials, something far deeper, something few people ever learn to recognize within themselves. And that is where this story truly begins. Not with words, but with presence. Most people believe opportunity is given fairly, that it arrives for those who deserve it, those who have prepared, those who have earned it. But reality is far less comfortable. Who have prepared, those who have earned it. But reality is far less comfortable. Opportunity often arrives suddenly and responds to signals most people do not even realize they are sending. Imagine standing inside such a moment. There is no time to rehearse, no second opportunity to explain yourself. Everything about you, your conviction, your certainty, your direction must become visible instantly because hesitation, even for a single moment, can close a door forever. There is a difference between wanting something and being prepared for it. Many desire success. Very few are ready to be recognized when it appears, and even fewer can communicate that readiness so clearly that another person senses it within seconds. What was recognized in that moment was not skill, not intelligence. It was something far rarer, a decision already settled. A mind that had already committed itself so completely to a direction that it could not be mistaken, questioned or ignored. Most people wait for permission. They wait to be acknowledged, invited, validated. But those who understand this principle behave differently. They decide first. They occupy their place internally before anyone else grants it to them. And this is why moments like these carry such power. They expose who is merely wishing and who is already committed. Because when opportunity arrives, it does not ask whether you are prepared. It simply appears and then it chooses. 29 seconds. That was enough to separate one life from thousands of others moving toward the same goal. Not because of luck, not because of coincidence, but because one individual possessed something the others lacked. The question is, what was it? Was it certainty, vision, confidence, or something even deeper? Something that cannot be copied, borrowed, or learned overnight. Whatever it was, it spoke louder than language, faster than logic and stronger than doubt. Faster than logic and stronger than doubt. And here is the uncomfortable reality. Most people would have failed in that moment without ever realizing it. Not because they lack ability, but because they have not prepared themselves to be perceived in that way. They are still uncertain, still hesitating, still waiting for evidence before they decide. And because of this, they miss the very moments capable of changing their lives. But for those who understand this, those who discipline their minds, sharpen their purpose, and commit before opportunity appears, something different begins to occur. They stop waiting to be chosen. They become impossible to dismiss. Because when your belief becomes clear enough, when your intention becomes strong enough, when your direction becomes fixed, it becomes visible in seconds. It requires no explanation. It requires no approval. It simply reveals. There's no explanation. It requires no approval. It simply reveals itself. And when it does, the right people notice, the right doors open, and history quietly begins to shift. I shall begin by saying that what occurred within that brief encounter was not chance, nor was it the product of unusually clever words. It was something far more subtle, yet infinitely more powerful. Andrew Carnegie did not choose a man because of what he said, but because of what he had become. And what a man has become can often be recognized instantly by those who have trained themselves to observe. You must understand that every individual carries a signal whether he recognizes it or not. It is not created in the moment. It is not manufactured for the occasion. It is formed through repeated thinking day after day until it becomes part of his nature. This signal reveals itself in posture, in voice, in the way he looks into another person's eyes, and even in the silence between sentences. In that room, there were many searching for opportunity. Each possessed desire, perhaps even intense desire. Yet desire alone is never enough, for desire mixed with uncertainty produces hesitation, and hesitation cannot be concealed no matter how carefully one attempts to hide it. The young man of whom I speak did not enter as though he were seeking permission. He entered as one who had already decided his direction. This distinction is recognized by very few. Yet it is the very thing that separates those who merely hope from those who are truly prepared. Separates those who merely hope from those who are truly prepared. Most men, when faced with opportunity, attempt to prove themselves worthy. They speak too quickly. They try to impress. They search desperately for the right words. In doing so, they reveal uncertainty. They attempt to convince another because they have not fully convinced themselves. But this man behaved differently. There was no urgency within him to persuade. There was no tension in his effort to be accepted. His presence suggested something entirely different. It suggested that he had already accepted himself in the role he intended to occupy. This is what Carnegie recognized. He did not see qualifications. He did not see experience. He saw a mind that had already claimed its purpose. And such a mind does not waver when examined. It does not shift beneath pressure. It remains steady because its direction has already been determined. I have observed this quality in many men who later rose to remarkable heights. Before they became known, before they achieved anything of public importance, they carried this same signal. It was not loud. It did not seek attention. Yet it could not be ignored by those who understood how to recognize it. You may ask, what creates such a signal? It is not formed in a single instant. It is built through repeated thought. A man who spends his life questioning and reconsidering his purpose will carry uncertainty into every room he enters. A man who fixes his purpose firmly and returns to it daily carries something entirely different. He carries certainty, and certainty is felt before it is explained. Consider how quickly you form an impression of another person. Before words are exchanged, you sense whether he is confident or uncertain, steady or restless, focused or confused. This is not imagination, it is perception. And Carnegie, having encountered thousands of men, had refined this perception to a remarkable degree. In those 29 seconds, he was not listening for answers. He was observing signals. The others in that room revealed themselves without realizing it. Their shifting attention, their eagerness to impress, their careful selection of words all revealed one truth. They were still deciding who they were, and because they were undecided, they could not project certainty. The young man revealed something entirely different. There was no sign of internal conflict. His manner suggested that the matter had already been settled within him. He was not asking, "Will I be chosen?" He had already concluded, "This is where I belong." This is a dangerous idea to those who have never practiced it, because it requires a man to accept responsibility before authority is granted. It requires him to decide before he is invited, and most men refuse to do this. They prefer to wait until someone else tells them. But those who wait are rarely selected. The man who had already chosen his direction no longer required approval. He did not appear arrogant nor uncertain. He appeared certain in the quietest possible way, so certain that it required no defense. Others later described this as confidence. But that word, though common, does not fully explain what was seen. Confidence may be imitated briefly. Certainty cannot. Certainty is created briefly. Certainty cannot. Certainty is created through repeated thought, through commitment, through decisions made and maintained. And this is why the moment required so little time. Carnegie did not need more because he was not searching for surface qualities. He was searching for something deeper, something that reveals itself instantly to the trained observer. He was searching for a man who had already taken command of his own mind. Such a man is rare. He does not arrive asking what is expected of him. He arrives already knowing what he intends to accomplish. He does not wait for circumstances to shape him. He shapes his response before circumstances can influence him. This is what makes him visible. Others in that room may have possessed intelligence. They may have possessed education. They may even have possessed experience. But none of those qualities can replace the presence of a settled mind. And it was the settled mind that was chosen. You must recognize that this principle, and it was the settled mind that was chosen. You must recognize that this principle extends far beyond that single room. Every day, in countless ways, people are being observed. They are judged not only by what they say, but by what they project. And what they project is determined by what they repeatedly tell themselves internally. If you carry doubt, it will be visible. If you carry indecision, it will be felt. But if you carry a definite purpose held firmly and repeated daily, it will reveal itself naturally. This is why preparation cannot be delayed until the moment arrives. The moment does not wait. It appears and immediately measures what has already been built within you. The young man did not prepare for 29 seconds. He prepared long before he ever entered that room. He had shaped his thinking, fixed his purpose, and accepted his role within his own mind. When the moment arrived, he did not create certainty. He revealed it. And this is the lesson you must take from it. Do not wait for opportunity to shape your thinking. Shape your thinking so completely that when opportunity appears, it recognizes you. Do not try to impress in the moment. Become the individual who cannot be mistaken. For when your purpose is fixed, when your decision is settled, when your belief becomes complete, there is something about you that cannot remain hidden. It does not speak loudly, yet it is recognized instantly. And when speak loudly, yet it is recognized instantly. And when the right eyes observe it, no explanation becomes necessary. You must now understand that what separated that young man from all the others was not simply ambition, but the transformation of ambition into readiness. This difference is subtle, yet it changes everything. Most men remain trapped in the stage of wishing. They speak of success, imagine success, even pursue success. Yet inwardly they are still waiting for certainty before fully committing themselves. And that waiting weakens them. The young man had moved beyond that condition. His desire had become decision, and his decision had become preparation. By the time he entered that room, he was no longer asking whether he belonged there. Preparation. By the time he entered that room, he was no longer asking whether he belonged there. He had already accepted that he did. This acceptance altered everything about the way he carried himself. It removed strain. It removed the need to impress. It removed the hidden fear of rejection that so many carry without realizing it. This is what true readiness produces. Calmness. Not passivity, not weakness, but controlled certainty. A man who is ready does not need to force confidence into his voice. He does not need to over-explain his value. He stands naturally because his mind is no longer divided. Explain his value. He stands naturally because his mind is no longer divided against itself. Most people never reach this condition because they spend their lives seeking approval instead of building certainty. They watch the reactions of others too closely. They adjust themselves constantly in order to fit expectations. And by doing so, they reveal uncertainty. The young man revealed the opposite. He did not shape himself around the room. The room adjusted itself around him. This is the effect of inner alignment. Andrew Carnegie recognized it immediately because men who possess genuine readiness are rare. Many possess talent. Many possess education. But very few possess a mind that has already accepted responsibility before being granted authority. And this is what distinguished him from the rest. He was already acting internally as the man he intended to become. You must understand how powerful this principle truly is. Every action begins twice. First in the mind, then in reality. The majority wait for reality to change before changing their thinking. But those who rise above ordinary conditions reverse this order. They transform themselves internally first. Then reality gradually begins to reflect that transformation. This is why belief matters so deeply. A man who secretly doubts himself cannot hide that doubt forever. It reveals itself through hesitation, through overthinking, through inconsistency. But a man whose belief has been reinforced daily carries a completely different presence. His actions appear direct. His speech becomes clear. His movements lose uncertainty because uncertainty no longer dominates his thinking. Carnegie had spent years studying men. He understood that behavior is only the visible surface of thought. Beneath every action lies a mental condition. Some men think in confusion and therefore act in confusion. Others think with clarity and therefore move with purpose. In those brief seconds, Carnegie was not evaluating performance. He was observing condition. The young man's condition revealed discipline, not necessarily discipline of action alone, but discipline of mind. He had returned to his purpose repeatedly until it became part of his identity. This is what most people fail to do. They think about their goals occasionally, but they do not hold them long enough for those goals to reshape their character. A repeated thought becomes a dominant thought. A dominant thought influences behavior, and repeated behavior forms identity. Eventually, the identity becomes so strong that it expresses itself automatically. This is why some individuals appear naturally certain. It is not because they were born different. It is because they trained themselves differently. You must also recognize that the world responds to certainty. People trust those who appear internally aligned. They follow those who do not hesitate under pressure. Also recognize that the world responds to certainty. People trust those who appear internally aligned. They follow those who do not hesitate under pressure. Not because such individuals are always correct, but because certainty communicates strength. Uncertainty communicates instability, and instability weakens influence. This explains why opportunity often seems unfair. It does not always select the most intelligent person, nor the most experienced. It frequently selects the person who appears most ready to act. The world responds to movement, direction, and conviction. Those who hesitate are often passed over before they fully understand what happened. The young man understood something the others did not. He understood that waiting to feel ready is a trap. Readiness is not something that suddenly appears. It is built deliberately through repeated mental conditioning. Day after day, he had strengthened his purpose, reinforced his belief, and imagined himself already occupying repeated mental conditioning. Day after day, he had strengthened his purpose, reinforced his belief, and imagined himself already occupying the position he sought. When the opportunity arrived, he did not need to transform himself for the moment. He simply revealed what had already been built. This is why preparation is invisible to most people. They only notice They only notice the result. They see the door opening, the opportunity appearing, the recognition take place. But they do not see the internal work that created the condition for that moment to happen. They mistake visible success for sudden luck because they never witnessed the silent preparation behind it. And this is the great misunderstanding of achievement. The decisive moment is rarely the true beginning. It is usually the confirmation of something that has already been developing internally for a long time. The 29 seconds did not create the young man's future. They exposed the man he had already become. You must therefore stop measuring progress only by external evidence. The deeper transformation always occurs first within thought. Every time you reinforce your purpose, every time you replace doubt with certainty, every time you act despite fear, you strengthen the internal condition that others will eventually recognize. This is how a person becomes undeniable. Not through performance alone, but through internal consistency, so strong that it naturally projects outward. Others sense it even when no words are spoken. They recognize direction. They recognize stability. They recognize the absence of inner conflict. And when the right observer encounters such a condition, decisions happen quickly. Not because they are rushed, but because certainty leaves a clear impression. Carnegie did not need lengthy explanations because he recognized something most people overlook. He recognized a man who had already chosen his future before the world had confirmed it. That is the real lesson hidden inside those 29 seconds. Opportunity does not transform a man. It reveals him. And what it reveals depends entirely upon what he has trained himself to become long before the moment arrives. You must now see that the greatest advantage the young man possessed was not intelligence, education, or even confidence. It was emotional control. While others entered the room carrying hidden tension, he entered carrying stability. And stability under pressure is one of the rarest qualities any person can possess. Most people lose themselves in important moments. Their thinking becomes scattered. Their emotions begin reacting faster than their judgment. They become overly eager, overly careful, overly concerned with the opinions in front of them. In that condition, they stop expressing who they truly are and begin performing who they believe they should be. But performance always carries strain. It creates inconsistency between thought and behavior. A trained observer notices this immediately. The eyes move differently. The voice loses steadiness. Small hesitations appear between words. The individual begins reacting instead of directing. And once this happens, certainty disappears. The young man revealed none of these signs. He remained composed because his inner state had already been organized long before the meeting occurred. This is the hidden power of preparation. Proper preparation does not merely sharpen skill, it stabilizes emotion. It removes internal conflict before pressure arrives. Andrew Carnegie understood this better than most men of his time. He knew that opportunities rarely unfold under perfect conditions. Pressure is almost always present. Uncertainty is almost always present. And therefore, the person who can remain steady while others become reactive immediately gains an advantage. This is why emotional discipline matters so deeply. A man may possess talent, but if pressure unsettles him, his talent becomes unreliable. Another man may possess less visible ability, yet if he remains calm, decisive, and focused under pressure, he becomes trustworthy. And trust is often valued more highly than brilliance. The young man communicated trustworthiness without needing to announce it. His calmness suggested control. His control suggested discipline, and discipline suggested reliability. Carnegie recognized that such a man could be depended upon not only when were favorable, but when conditions became difficult. This is an important distinction. Many people appear capable when circumstances are easy. Very few maintain clarity when uncertainty enters the room. Yet it is precisely in moments of uncertainty that true character becomes visible. Pressure does not create character, it exposes it. You must therefore train yourself not only to think correctly, but to remain composed while thinking correctly. The majority can hold belief when life feels comfortable. The challenge begins when doubt, delay, criticism, or fear appear. At that point, most individuals abandon their direction emotionally, even if they continue speaking about it outwardly. The young man had trained himself differently. His belief was not dependent upon immediate results. It was rooted more deeply than temporary circumstances. Because of this, the environment could not easily shake him. He carried his direction internally instead of searching for it externally. This is what creates real personal power, not loudness, not force, stability. The ability to remain centered while circumstances shift around you. Most people are controlled by conditions. They feel confident only when events favor them. They feel certain only when others approve of them. Their state changes constantly because it depends entirely upon external feedback. But the individual who develops inner stability becomes different. He does not rise and fall with every opinion, obstacle, or delay. His direction remains fixed because it was chosen internally. Others notice this immediately, even if they cannot explain why. They feel that he is grounded. And grounded people naturally influence unstable environments. This is another reason the moment required so little time. Carnegie was not merely observing ambition. He was observing emotional steadiness. He was observing whether the man before him would collapse under uncertainty or remain clear within it. The answer became visible almost instantly. Most people underestimate how much emotion affects perception. A restless mind creates restless behavior. Fear creates inconsistency. Desperation creates pressure that others can sense immediately. Even when hidden beneath polite language, emotional instability reveals itself through countless subtle signals. The young man's signals were entirely different. There was no desperation in him, no silent panic, no attempt to force approval. This absence of emotional strain made his presence unusually strong. He appeared composed because internally he had already settled the question of who he intended to become. This is why self-mastery always precedes influence. Before a person can lead circumstances, opportunities, or even other people, he must first learn to direct himself. Without inner discipline, external success becomes unstable. One obstacle, one rejection, one moment of pressure becomes enough to break momentum. Carnegie had seen this happen repeatedly. Carnegie had seen this happen repeatedly. He had encountered men full of enthusiasm who lost direction the moment adversity appeared. He had learned that temporary excitement means little if unsupported by emotional discipline. What lasts is steadiness. What creates long-term trust is consistency under pressure. The young man revealed this consistency naturally. He did not appear rushed by the moment because he was not emotionally dependent upon the outcome. This is another paradox most people fail to understand. The less desperately a person needs approval, the stronger he appears. Desperation weakens presence because it signals dependence. But the man who already believes in his direction carries a different energy entirely. He acts from commitment rather than fear, and commitment creates calmness. You must begin practicing this deliberately. Learn to remain steady when uncertainty appears. Learn to hold your direction when immediate evidence is absent. Learn to control emotional reactions before they control your decisions. Because in every important moment, people respond not only to your words, but to your emotional condition. If your mind becomes unstable, your actions will follow. But if your mind remains disciplined, your behavior will project certainty even under pressure. And certainty under pressure is one of the clearest signals of readiness any person can display. The young man's life changed in seconds because those seconds revealed years of internal conditioning. His thoughts had been disciplined. His emotions had been organized. His direction had been reinforced repeatedly until pressure could no longer disrupt it. This is what made him unforgettable. Not performance, not charm, not luck. Inner control. The ability to remain aligned with his purpose even while being observed, evaluated, and tested in real time. And this is the standard you must aim toward. Build a mind that remains steady when others become uncertain, Build emotional discipline strong enough that opportunity finds no confusion within you. For when preparation reaches that level, your presence alone begins speaking before you ever say a word. You must now understand that there comes a point where preparation stops feeling like effort and begins to feel like identity. This is the stage most people never reach. They attempt change briefly, then return to old patterns before those patterns are fully replaced. As a result, their progress remains temporary. Their belief rises and falls. Their direction changes with circumstances. But the young man had crossed a different threshold. His purpose was no longer something he practiced occasionally. It had become part of the way he saw himself. And once a purpose becomes identity, behavior begins to follow naturally. Discipline no longer feels forced because the mind no longer argues against the action. This is why lasting transformation always begins internally. A man cannot consistently act in opposition to the image he holds of himself. If he secretly believes he is uncertain, he will hesitate even while trying to appear confident. If he secretly believes he is unprepared, he will shrink in moments that require decisiveness. The outer behavior will always struggle against the inner belief. But when identity changes, actions begin aligning automatically. The young man no longer needed to convince himself in the moment because the decision had already become part of his self-concept. He was not pretending to belong in that room. Internally, he already belonged there. Andrew Carnegie recognized this immediately because identity always reveals itself through consistency. A person acting against his own self-image becomes unstable under pressure. Contradictions appear, confidence fades when challenged, certainty weakens when circumstances become difficult. But a man whose thinking, belief, and identity are aligned moves differently. He does not need constant motivation because his actions are no longer dependent upon temporary emotion. He acts from internal definition. and internal definition creates endurance. This is the hidden force behind every extraordinary achievement. Most people focus only on visible action, but action alone is unreliable if identity is unchanged. Sooner or later, the individual returns to familiar habits because the mind naturally seeks consistency with its dominant self-image. The young man had already altered that self-image. Through repeated thought, repeated belief, repeated mental rehearsal, he had begun seeing himself differently long before anyone else did. This is why recognition came so quickly. Carnegie was not witnessing a performance. He was witnessing identity expressed naturally. You must understand how powerful this becomes over time. Once the mind accepts a higher standard for itself, hesitation begins disappearing from areas where it once dominated. Decisions become faster, actions become clearer, energy becomes more focused because internal conflict has been reduced. Most people waste enormous amounts of energy fighting themselves internally. One part of the mind desires growth while another part clings to fear, doubt, and old limitations. This creates inconsistency. Progress begins, then stops. Motivation rises, then stops. Motivation rises, then collapses. The person moves forward briefly before retreating again. But when identity changes, this internal resistance weakens. The mind begins supporting the direction instead of opposing it. This creates momentum, and momentum is one of the powerful forces in achievement because consistent movement compounds over time. Carnegie understood that the young man possessed this momentum internally. He sensed that the man before him would continue moving forward without needing constant supervision or encouragement. Such individuals are rare because most people require external pressure to remain disciplined. Remove the pressure and they drift back toward comfort. The young man was different. His discipline had become internal. His standards no longer depended upon observation from others. He carried them within himself. This is the stage where a person becomes truly dependable. You must aim for this condition in your own life. Do not rely forever on temporary motivation, emotional excitement, or outside validation. Those things fade quickly. Build identity instead. Build a self-image so aligned with your purpose that disciplined action begins feeling natural. This process requires repetition. The mind does not change instantly. Old patterns resist replacement because familiarity feels safe even when it produces limitation. But every time you reinforce a new standard through thought and action, you strengthen the new identity. Eventually a shift occurs. What once felt uncomfortable begins feeling normal. What once required effort begins happening automatically. The individual who once struggled to act decisively now feels uncomfortable remaining indecisive. The person who once feared responsibility now naturally moves toward. This is how transformation becomes permanent, not through a single breakthrough moment, but through repeated internal conditioning strong enough to reshape identity itself. The young man had undergone this conditioning long before entering that room. That is why he appeared calm while others appeared uncertain. He no longer depended upon the moment to tell him who he was. He had already answered that question privately within himself. And this reveals another important truth. The world often responds to you according to the identity you consistently project. Not the identity you occasionally display, but the one repeated so often that it becomes unmistakable. People sense when a person truly believes in his direction. They sense when commitment has become permanent rather than temporary. This creates influence because certainty sustained over time becomes difficult to ignore. Most people change their behavior based on circumstances. The undeniable individual changes circumstances through the stability of his behavior. He remains aligned even when conditions fluctuate. This consistency creates trust, and trust creates opportunity. Carnegie saw that trustworthiness immediately. He recognized a man who would continue moving forward after the excitement of the moment disappeared. A man who would remain directed even when difficulties appeared. A man whose identity had become stronger than temporary fear. This is why true preparation always extends beyond skill. Skills may create opportunity initially, but identity determines whether opportunity can be sustained. Without internal alignment, success becomes unstable. Pressure eventually exposes contradiction. But when a person's identity supports his purpose completely, his actions gain force. He stops depending upon mood. He stops waiting for perfect conditions. He begins acting from internal certainty rather than external reaction. And once this stage is reached, opportunities begin responding differently. People begin sensing reliability, direction, and focus without needing proof. Doors open faster because trust forms faster. Decisions happen quickly because uncertainty is absent. The young man did not become undeniable in 29 seconds. He became undeniable through countless unseen moments before those 29 seconds ever existed. The brief encounter simply revealed the final result of a mind that had already transformed itself. This is the principle you must carry forward. Do not merely attempt temporary improvement. Build an identity that naturally produces the life you seek. Strengthen it daily until your thinking, emotions, actions, and purpose move together in complete alignment. For when a man reaches that condition, he no longer searches desperately for opportunity. Opportunity begins recognizing him. You must now recognize that once a man reaches this level of inner alignment, something remarkable begins to happen. He no longer wastes energy trying to convince the world of his value. His attention shifts entirely toward execution. This is the point where true momentum is created. Most people remain trapped in the cycle of appearance. They spend their lives attempting to look capable, look successful, look confident. But maintaining an image consumes enormous mental energy because the image must constantly be defended. The moment criticism appears, insecurity returns. The moment failure occurs, identity weakens. But the young man had moved beyond appearance. He was not focused on being perceived as capable. He was focused on becoming capable. This distinction changes everything. One approach depends upon external reaction. The other depends upon internal development. Andrew Carnegie understood this difference immediately. He had encountered countless men who spoke. Andrew Carnegie understood this difference immediately. He had encountered countless men who spoke impressively, yet collapsed under responsibility. They desired the reward of opportunity more than the burden that accompanied it, and because of this, they could not be trusted when pressure increased. The young man revealed the opposite condition. His attention was not fixed upon impressing others. It was fixed upon preparation, contribution, and action. This gave his presence unusual weight because people instinctively trust those who appear committed to purpose rather than appearance. You must understand that the world constantly tests depth. Surface qualities may attract attention temporarily, but responsibility always exposes what lies underneath. When challenges appear, performance alone is not enough. The individual must possess internal structure strong enough to remain stable under pressure. This is why character matters more than image. Character is built privately. Image is constructed publicly. Image seeks approval. Character seeks alignment. And eventually, every important opportunity measures character, whether openly or silently. Carnegie recognized character in the young man because character reveals itself through consistency. The man's posture, tone, emotional control, and certainty all pointed toward the same conclusion. There was no contradiction within him. His internal state and external behavior matched. This congruence creates power. Most people are divided internally. One part wants advancement while another fears responsibility. One part desires change while another clings to comfort. These opposing forces weaken action because the individual moves in conflicting directions simultaneously. But when a person resolves this inner division, energy becomes concentrated. Thought, emotion, and behavior begin reinforcing one another instead of fighting each other. The result: thought, emotion, and behavior begin reinforcing one another instead of fighting each other. The result is clarity. And clarity is one of the most persuasive qualities any human being can possess. The young man carried this clarity into the room. He did not need to force authority because authority naturally emerges from internal order. Others often mistake this for charisma, but true charisma is rarely performance. It is usually the visible result of certainty, alignment, and emotional discipline combined. You must begin developing this within yourself deliberately. Stop focusing only on outcomes and begin focusing on structure. Build the habits, thoughts, emotional responses, and standards that create stability internally. Because without structure, success becomes difficult to sustain. Most individuals attempt to achieve externally what they have not yet built internally. They seek leadership without self-control. They seek influence without discipline. They seek recognition without preparation. And eventually, reality exposes the imbalance. The young man avoided this trap because he had already built inwardly what opportunity later revealed outwardly. This is why the moment appeared effortless. Effortlessness at high levels is almost always the result of invisible preparation. Consider how quickly people form impressions. Within seconds, they sense whether someone is grounded or unstable, certain or doubtful, disciplined or reactive. These impressions are not created only by words. They are created by patterns. The mind constantly communicates its condition through behavior. Carnegie had trained himself to read these patterns. He knew that a man who controls himself can and eventually be trusted to handle greater responsibility. But a man who cannot direct his own thoughts and emotions becomes unpredictable under pressure. This is why self-mastery always comes first. Before a person can manage opportunity, wealth, leadership, or influence, he must first manage himself. Otherwise, the very very things he desires eventually overwhelm him. The young man possessed this self-management already. Not perfectly perhaps, but sufficiently enough that it became visible immediately. Carnegie saw someone who would continue moving forward even without constant supervision. Someone who would remain steady when situations became uncertain. Someone whose direction came from within rather than from external approval. That is the quality leaders search for, whether they realize it consciously or not. Reliability, internal direction, stability under pressure. These qualities reduce uncertainty, and people naturally move toward those who reduce uncertainty. You must therefore stop thinking of preparation as something temporary. Preparation is not an event. It is a lifestyle of mental organization. Every day you either strengthen your internal structure or weaken it. Every repeated thought either reinforces certainty or reinforces doubt. The young man had spent enough time strengthening certainty that it eventually became dominant. Once certainty becomes dominant, action becomes simpler. Decisions become cleaner. Once certainty becomes dominant, action becomes simpler. Decisions become cleaner. Fear loses much of its control because the mind no longer debates every step endlessly. This does not mean uncertainty disappears completely. Even the strongest individuals experience moments of fear or doubt. The difference is that they no longer allow those feelings to control direction. Their purpose remains stronger than temporary emotion. Carnegie sensed this strength in the young man immediately. He recognized someone whose commitment would survive discomfort. And this is crucial because every meaningful opportunity eventually demands endurance. Many people begin strongly. Very few continue strongly once excitement fades. But the individual whose identity, character, and discipline are aligned can continue moving long after emotion changes. He becomes dependable, not because circumstances remain easy, but because his direction remains fixed. This is why the 29 seconds, because circumstances remain easy, but because his direction remains fixed. This is why the 29 seconds mattered. They revealed a condition that had taken years to build. The brief moment was only the visible surface of a much deeper process already completed internally. And this is the principle you must remember. Great opportunities are rarely won in the moment itself. They are won beforehand, through preparation invisible to everyone except the person building it. The moment simply exposes whether the internal work has truly been done. If it has, recognition often happens quickly. Because when clarity, discipline, belief, emotional control, and identity become unified, there is something about a person that cannot easily be ignored. The world senses it. Leaders recognize it. Opportunity responds to it. And once this condition is reached, a man no longer needs to chase every door desperately. His presence alone begins causing doors to open, to chase every door desperately. His presence alone begins causing doors to open.